It all started when I bought myself a completely disassembled Jupiter.
Well, before putting it all back together into a solid metal motorcycle, I decided to take a look inside the engine and see how alive it actually is.
The motorbike has been gathering ancient dirt and dinosaur deposits for decades, so first and foremost I wanted to clean it thoroughly. After sealing all the holes, I discovered a substance resembling ozone in the garage, and we began the process of washing away these ancient deposits. And it's time to clean the intake, specifically the air filter. Over the years of use, a large of hellish mazout, primer, sand and gravel have accumulated in it. In general, a big cleaning was ahead. However, in spite of this dirt, this 60s filter surprised me with the quality of its filtration. Look, this is the internal component that goes into the engine. She is nearly clean. Considering that the outer part, which takes in air from the street, looks like a wild sandbox, cluttered with dirt, sand, and soil. So with its function, this filters really well. And naturally, the inner surface of the cylinders also underwent meticulous machining, so I sent them for boring and see how it looks at this moment. Absorbers. I had up to 6 pairs of them, and I had to put together multiple attractive ones externally and functional ones internally. To my surprise, some shock absorbers had full containers of oil inside, with the rods and seals in good condition, and overall they were perfectly functional, while others looked as if the motorcycle had jumped off the roof of a 5th floor building. However, I was able to choose 2 excellent specimens, wash them thoroughly, and send them. After all the effort, I was eager to see, feel, and hear some results. Therefore, I made the decision to install a carburetor, fit it into the frame, and attempt to start it as a well-deserved reward for my hard work. The carburetor selected was the Keihin PWK carburetor. In this case, it is a copy of a Japanese carburetor. The diameter is close to the original carburetor that was installed on this engine. Priority here for me is not maximum power, simply very stable operation and some kind of economy.
Besides the motorbike, I also possess this capsule originating from the spacecraft. Sidecar, call it whatever you want. And her turn came. Unfortunately, the cradles from these old figs are often in such action. However, I believed it is not an issue, we will easily process it. You have no concept of how incorrect I was. It was not that challenging to remove all of this and rip a portion of corroded metal. It was much more difficult to make an exactly shaped piece of the required size and weld it there qualitatively so that this thin metal of the cradle would not warp. It's crucial to note that in this case I had to proceed without putty, as everything will be painted in powder, meaning only bare metal is needed. Now my task is to collect all the rusty and not so rusty parts, put them together and take to the holy temple of sand construction, where I will clean it all myself. It is a highly creative work of art when you witness the paint, either on its own or as a result of some cosmic phenomenon. This is pure joy. Generally, when our YouTube is closed, I'll work at the factory as a sandblaster. You will have to sandblast again. The bolts and fasteners were cleaned, but I had my own plan for them, and I decided to nickel them after watching a YouTube tutorial video. So, we will need a baking form, which I stole from the kitchen, salt and vinegar to make the workshop smell awful. There we add 2 electrodes, connect them to the plus and minus. When we position the parts there, the magic begins to happen. All the details had to be attached to one wire, because to connect the negative from the power source to it, but we connect the positive to the nickel electrode. Gas is released, everything is bubbling, nickel settles on the surface of iron. In any case, I wanted to believe it. What happened in my nickel plating laboratory? Well, first of all, it was necessary to wash all this from vinegar and salt water, quickly dry it, and find out that it turned out to be a complete mess. The details were not completely galvanized. The best thing I could do in this situation was to go to a real galvanizing production and have these parts galvanized properly at a normal factory. And look at the result now. I ordered a yellowish zinc, since many bolts for this motorcycle originally came in this color. I'm not sure if these parts were supposed to be yellow, but since... And with the pipes, I decided differently. I decided that I would restore them for this metal sponge or metal wool. It is sold in detailing stores or can be ordered on the internet. Of course, an important thing, a means for cleaning glass fireplaces from soot. We cover all the pipes with it and let it rest for a short period of time. However, we then proceed to thoroughly clean all the soot and rust using this specially formulated fireplace cleaner. Stubbornly scrape off all the remnants of rust, soot, and everything else we don't need with the pipe. It turns out that we securely fix the component in a vise and make use of a polishing paste and a screwdriver attachment to meticulously bring this to a pretty decent and pleasingly shiny appearance. I would say the entire procedure took me approximately a couple of hours. It was not a long duration considering the outcome, do you agree? Certainly the pipes are not new, but they already look similar 3 meters. In principle, this completely suits me. I can't wait to put all this on the assembled motors. The crankcase covers look so-so, all battered with boots, dirty, dark. I decided to polish them too. For this, we apply WD-40 and wipe off all the dirt residues with Scotch-Brite, while also polishing some small. It turns out such a cool matte surface, already much neater than it was. Well, now comes the polishing. Apply the paste to the cloth. You can even polish with just a cloth and paste. There will already be an effect. See how shiny. After a duration of 5 minutes of polishing the ignition cover, which was already quite dull and cloudy, it practically transferred into a mirror. Hello. Wow, I believe the outcome is outstanding. Not flawless, but fantastic for restarting.
Prior to assembly, I was able to obtain a magazine guide on the device and repair of motorcycles from this particular generation, which has been a long-standing dream of mine. Here are simply bomb illustrations detailed with all the cuts. Not that so necessary for assembling a motorcycle, but it still gave me a little confidence, especially since I am assembling such a project first time in my life. I chose to start with assembling the rear shock absorbers, as they were almost completely assembled and needed to be restored to their original factory condition. First of all, I decided to replace seals with new ones, because as most likely they will leak in the first week of the trip. Not difficult in general, main thing is protect thread on stem with at least electrical tape, so that new seal is not cut or damaged. Well, then I partially collected it from memory. partially from pictures in the book, it with oil from the sole, so that the excess just poured out and sealed it all nicely with a key, ensuring a cooling test showed the hydraulics work quite tolerably, so it was possible to continue assembling, installing springs and iterative chrome part, not forgetting the felt dust boots. There will probably be a lot of such comments here, but in fact they used to make shock absorbers well and qualitatively before 50 years ago. They are still alive and can be disassembled, assembled and serviced without any problems. Once shock absorbers are ready, you can install rear swing arm on frame. One of the most enjoyable moments in this entire process is unpacking the components painting, akin to receiving new gifts from under the Christmas tree. I don't remember how it was in the original. I tried to tighten all the bolts with the heads inside the wheel so that dirt and water wouldn't damage the thread and nut. A very elegant design of tightening the lower bolt of the rear shock absorbers with another small bolt. That is to say, the reliability becomes loose. There is already a potential risk that the second one will become loose as well. Further compromise. The upper bolts are counteracted by an extra nut. Not sure if it was like that at the factory, but somehow I managed to do it that way. The rear suspension is constructed, which signifies that it is the appropriate moment to construct the front suspension, ensuring that all components are properly assembled for optimal performance and safety duration. Something similar to that, only initially you had to press the clip and then place it on. Having tried on that, everything fits into place. New shiny bearings were smeared in a terrible graphite grease and already installed in their workplace. By the way, the book's full in this situation, as I couldn't recall exactly how to assemble the steering damper, placing all these small parts in the rotor, but it's easy to do with the help of the picture. Installing a new chain is not tricky, and while installing everything back, place the clutch discs with new ones, and out of curiosity I measured them. There was virtually no distinction in thickness. The collection I possessed was a suitable fit. He was exactly what was needed in terms of both quantity and size of the discs, and before that I encountered different options. Nowhere could I find how tight the clutch springs should be tightened. so I tightened them by visual inspection. Furthermore, in my view, oil not to leak out, it was necessary to put a crankcase cover. According to factory standards, no sealant is there, but first of all, I don't really trust paper gaskets, and secondly, when the engine is disassembled again, the ones put sealant are removed much easier. Everything was fine for people in those glorious 60s, but they didn't have power drills, and I feel a little sorry for them. Certainly, I have always been astonished at the location of the oil filler neck for these particular engines. She is side under the IZH emblem. I like to measure and adjust their geometry a little in some places. The tiny wrench was not very effective in dealing with the ancient rust. Problem with levers was a very large gap. I made the decision to fix it in some way. I simply cut out the bushing from the aluminum tube and inserted it. Then I found the necessary bolts, nuts, washers, and all preparations had been made for the engine installation, although the engine itself was not yet ready. I ran my brand new carburetor. Having installed the gasket, which by the way looks like a bandage of Ninja Turtles, I discovered that the windows of the cylinders are slightly different in shape, and that the right cylinder clearly needs a little refinement with a drill. Apparently the cylinders on this motorcycle originated from slightly differently and have a distinct appearance. But I fixed this roughness. And now the long-awaited moment has come. But no, it turned out he's not ready yet, especially thousands of kilometers away from home. It is significantly simpler to place the chain on the motorcycle while it is still without an engine and these rubber chain guards. Here it is, the long-awaited moment. Of course, for my back, because it's very happy that I'll now drag the engine into the frame. Due to the fact that the engine mounting plate of my motorcycle had previously been reinforced by someone else, it was not able to fit its designated position. Native bolts by length, had to put non-native ones. Well, as never before, the Japanese chain that was native to Japan was sawn to the size that was desired. And the drive sprocket is installed, of course, also new. And now I will show you one of the many frames the entire shooting. That's how it happens in most cases.
The only thing is, none of this gets into the montage. Well then, silencers, rockets.
Originally, this motorcycle had painted mufflers, the ones that were used on the IZH 56. However, I like these chrome ones, even though I managed to find them in less than ideal condition. Well, now you can install this highly praised electronic ignition system from the Czech Republic. It can be installed easy. The main point in all of this is to actually find and identify the precise moment in time. Ignition timing. That is not reach the top dead center, approximately as the manual indicates 2.62 millimeters. Wow, what an impressive. However, I decided to take a smaller portion from it because I subtracted that later ignition is actually better than earlier ignition. Less engine heating. In my case, it appears most relevant to me. And there are actually just a couple of beautiful final details that remain. Retrieve the glove compartment, seats, and you are able to proceed with a test drive. With the new seat cover, my old friend Maestro assisted me. He's a marvelous case with a fancy white border. In reality, I had to acquire the skill of seat upholstery on my own. Because eyelets, iron rings, had to be installed where the handle is attached on top of the seat and the button is located for detaching it from the seat. They didn't have a special tool, so I riveted them as best I could with the help of an adjustable wrench, first practicing on a piece of leather. And I fastened the case with these jeans rivets. In order to rivet them, I even had to ruin one of the pliers in my workshop, reaming the holes to make them suitable for the rivet. But in the end, for the first time in my opinion, it turned out quite well. More or less bringing to life the lower rubber bands that prevent the seat from hitting the frame, I attached them with classic modern rivets, because the original fastened long rotted and fallen off. Everywhere if possible, and where not visible, he used rubber bands to prevent paint peeling, lasting longer without corrosion. And also see how the maestro covered the handle for this seat with exquisite leather material.
This is actually a steering wheel specifically designed for the sporty M-series BMW cars, providing a superior driving experience and enhanced control.
He has clear vision on the ground. I appreciate these EJ models for their low height. Despite the absence of a saddle, he resembles a lowrider. You are essentially sitting on the ground. Now you need to install the tank, fill it with fuel, complete the handle, and that is all you need to do. You have the option to perform initial mechanical tests to assess the movement characteristics of this. Said done. The tank is installed in place, a rubber pad is placed to prevent scratching, the bolts are tightened. Bands and side pads were not forgotten either, and the fuel line was also installed in its place. The first drops of gasoline to a dry tank, it is still completely dry. And I also know how the throttle is implemented in these retro models. Yes, it works poorly, yes, it's a hassle to change the cables, but at the time, how aesthetically pleasing it looks when the cable goes inside the handlebar, aesthetically pleasing to the maximum. And then I sat down to draw a new electrical wiring diagram, and all the wiring was in very poor condition, so I decided to do it, adhering as closely as possible to the original colors in the scheme. Well, naturally, to the extent feasible, wires that can be located in the garage. But the thing is that the wiring I'm doing is not original, because it's a homemade diagram and I'm wiring it based on it. After inspecting the rear brake, I was pleasantly surprised to find that it is in working condition. And the only thing I couldn't actually locate from that particular period is collars, like those made of iron, which were used as restraint. In some places it is extremely challenging to locate them for purchase, so I display everything on contemporary white pedestals and installed in its designated place. All of the details were meticulously powder coated to ensure a flawless finish. Certain areas required to be left unpainted were protected from powder, while others were not, and had to be cleaned prior to the installation of the parts. The frame, suspension, and fasteners were assembled right. And then the most pleasant part awaited us, installing a new chrome, during which you can already see how the stroller acquires its decorative appearance. But let's take a break from cradle and move on to the motorcycle headlight. In the original, she has a headlight with a 6-volt bulb. These lamps? No, not the whole headlight, just the glass and the reflecting element. I've been searching for a suitable one for quite a long time. An element that can be borrowed from another motorcycle or somewhere else. I found such a headlight for a chopper, from which For the battery, it was necessary to apply very modern technology. I entered a special tray for a modern 12-volt battery in the glove compartment on a 3D printer. I fastened the tray securely with 2 bolts and affixed the battery onto it using a rubber band specifically designed for securing batteries in place. I am satisfied with this instruction. By that time, I managed to assemble the wiring of the stroller and connect all clearance lights in the front and rear on its fender. The last check before installation, the size is working, and then I installed a wheel roller like the rest of the wheels on the motorcycle. It is chrome plated. Fixed the nut properly with a cotter pin. The front is ready. It remains to install the rear stop light and marker, which the wiring passes through the saddle. Well, what's next? Next, we put the stroller. Check with the book. There is a short installation instruction and a camber caster angle. After some adjustment, everything fell into place, and the motorcycle touched the ground for the first time on all 3 wheels. The seat itself, of course, was also reupholstered. Everything was according to approximate samples, as it was from the factory, but it turned out, in my opinion, even more beautiful than it was in the original. I planned to ride into the city on a motorcycle, so I installed rear view mirrors. And the ultimate cherry on top of the cake was the carburetor covers, which I additionally installed in order that I could ultimately embark on my inaugural journey to the city.
It is unfortunate that there is no reverse. I truly require a little more.